Hello, everybody. Good to see you all here. Just make sure everything is... Yeah. Make sure everything is fine. Alright, so... let's begin. Let's go ahead and start pre-warming that. Hello. Let me just get to my comment section. Come on. Hey Mark, how's it going? Hello Daniel. Hey Ken. Oh, I blew this thing out. Oh, I have to get a new phone case. There we go. Kraken, how's it going? I hope I said hello to Daniel. Alright. If I appear a little red, it just might be because last 5 minutes I was just rushing to get everything in place, and so now I'm just kind of like a little bit flush-faced, but I am good. So we got Ryan. Hello, Ryan. And, oh, I forgot to bring out the tea that I was going to use today. Alright, hold on. Alright. So, today's tea is going to be English breakfast. Hey Teresa. Rayanne, how's it going? Hi Goofy Rolls. I'm doing good, Teresa. Been busy making videos, but other than that, I'm good. Just put that here for now. Okay. Cool. All right. We got 27 people watching. So the way that you guys see the is there something in my pocket? It's it's a ticket to see a live production of Aladdin in 2019. How do I have that in my pocket? Daniel says, "What's your thoughts on the Jupiter and 119 locomotives?" They're pretty nice. I don't like them as much as other locomotives, but they're pretty nice. Teresa says, "Can you do a Titanic Honor and Glory video update?" Well, they haven't updated anything yet on Titanic Honor and Glory, so there's nothing to show you guys yet. Unless they did something today and I don't know about it, but I checked 2 days ago and they didn't do anything new to the game, so... Ironically enough, yesterday I was going to live stream me playing the game, but I was so busy making the video for Friday, because that video is running late. It was supposed to be available today for paying channel members, but it's not going to be done today. So I just didn't have time yesterday to live stream me playing Titanic Honor and Glory. So Not really digging that green color. I think it's gonna rain. Thank you, Ryan. Brocky says Hurricane Ian is ruining everything right now. Yeah, I heard it's really going through a lot of metropolitan areas and stuff. Okay. Time to preheat some of this. Goofy says, have you seen some of the supposed film from the Titanic? It's obviously fake. If you look at the water, it's not right. Water does not scale to miniature sets. I'm not sure what you mean. Okay, that's good. So now we just bring these up to temperature. Oh, that's a bit too much. Daniel says, hey Alex, weren't some 1880s steam locomotives modernized in the 1900s? I mean, yeah. I mean, some were. I mean, it's just like a car. Some people just change things. They modernize stuff. So, I imagine that they were. Hello, Pacific. Alright, so, what am I going to eat today? Well, I don't have any other things. All I have left is these package of McVitie's. I haven't been eating these lately because I had purchased a whole set. It was like 4 bags of McVitie's, and they arrived on a really hot day, so they all melted because they're all chocolate covered. So they all melted into like one brick, and so it's just not beautiful when I put it on a plate. It doesn't look nice for tea time. But seeing as I don't have any more pumpkin bread, I don't have any more Scottish shortbread, I don't have any other pastries or anything else I could have for tea time. All I have is these things that are stuck together like a brick. I have no other choice. I have to do what I can do. So I forgot to put this back on. Alright. So you're gonna see why I haven't been putting these on my plate lately, because the only way to separate them is to shove a knife between them, and even then they break apart into little pieces. So and I have to do them 2 at a time instead of 1 at a time, because if I try to do 1 at a time, it'll break apart into even smaller pieces. Although I do want to cut these in half. There we go. There. I don't know where to put this here. Let's put that in there. Ken asks, why do some locomotives have drive wheels that were unevenly spaced? The locomotive from Back to the Future Part 3 is a good example. Usually it has more to do with the weight distribution of the locomotive. So with a lot of locomotives, as you know, the weight of the locomotive must be on the drive wheels. That's how it gets going. That's how it has traction onto the rails. So they will put the drive wheels where they think most of the weight is resting. But the other reason, too, is because with certain locomotives, I don't remember that particular Back to the Future locomotive very well. Like, I don't have a picture of it in my head. But what I can tell you is there are locomotives like the Eureka and Palisade, for instance, that have unevenly spaced wheels. Well, no, not the Eureka. What's the other one? It's the one with the 6 drive wheels. But it's just like the Eureka. But anyway, it has 2 drive wheels spaced way back from the other 4. And the reason why is because the firebox is in between them. So because the firebox dips so low into the boiler's frame, there's no room to put an axle. So they had to put the wheels way behind it. So that's part of the reason. So sometimes it has to do with how low the firebox is and the placement of the firebox compared to the rest of the locomotive. And sometimes it has to do with just trying to space out the weight distribution of the locomotive. So, put that there. All right. Hi, Technoblade. Yeah, I know. Rudolph says, yes, steam locomotives were modernized in the 1900s and after. Example, the Durango and Rio Grande Westerns Class 70s were modernized and were built into C-19 class locomotives. Not all 70s were rebuilt into C-19s. Yeah, that's a good example. Tea goes in. 5 minutes. Alright. Oh, Teresa's back. Rayanne says, have you ever visited Railtown 1897 in Jamestown? They filmed Back to the Future 3 along with many other movies and TV shows there. It is really fun, a really fun place to visit with a rich history. Oh, I haven't been there before. I don't even know where Jamestown is, to be honest. Teresa says, Alex can get that tea set on Google. So, I mean, I don't think Google has its own store, but you can get it on eBay. But it's not just, like, widely available. Like, it is... They are antiques, and like antiques, they're expensive, and you have to, like, wait till one comes up for sale and that kind of thing. But, yeah, that's where I got mine, all from eBay. There's no... As far as I understand, there's no stores or anything that just sells this stuff right off the shelf. So... Ryan says, have you been to the Winchester house more than once? I've never even been once. I've never been to the Winchester Mystery House. I've been outside of it, but not inside. And I haven't even been that much outside. I went to the visitor center to buy tickets, and they weren't selling tickets at that time. So I've never been inside or even on the garden grounds of the Winchester house. Peden says, Alex, what museum ships have you visited? Oh, boy. Oh, so much. There used to be a museum ship that existed right outside of... What's that city called? I can't think of the city anymore because... But there was a city near San Juan Capistrano in California, but it was on the coast. So it was like next to San Clemente. It's funny, I can remember San Clemente, I can remember San Juan Capistrano, but I can't remember the city next to it. But there was like an aquarium there, and then there was right next to the aquarium was a sailing ship And that was like a museum ship, but it sailed on excursions on occasion. Well, that back in 2020 sank right there in the harbor, and then they just took it apart and threw it away. And so, but I've been on that ship. I've been to I can't remember the name, but there was a military ship, I want to say aircraft carrier in San Diego, it acts as like a museum ship. And I've been on that one. I've been on the Star of India. I've been on the SS Jeremiah O'Brien. I've been on the RMS Queen Mary. I feel like there's more, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Awesome, Technoblade. Rayanne says, Jamestown is near Sonora, a couple hours southeast from Sacramento. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I've never been there. Teresa says, what ship would I prefer, Normandy or USS Arizona? I've never seen USS Arizona, so I guess it would have to be Normandy. Ryan says, the one in San Diego is called USS Midway. Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I've been on USS Midway. When I was a kid, my dad took me to a military ship somewhere. I don't remember where. The memory is too fuzzy. Yeah. Okay, so tea is ready. Cool. And we'll put this over here. I kind of don't like how... There. Oh. I have to empty this cup here. USS Arizona was the battleship that sank in Pearl Harbor, 1941. Oh, I see. Yeah, I can't remember all these ship names. Yeah, I'm still very new to ships. You know, I didn't really start getting into ships until 2021, so literally last year. So I don't know anything about ships in general. I'm still learning a bunch of stuff, but... And trying to remember all the names of these ships that everybody knows, I can't remember it. Michael says Antarctica ice wall. Yeah, well, you guys get one last good look at this model railroad because it will not be in operation for too much longer. Very soon I'm going to start some work on, first of all, some repairs, and then second of all, some landscaping. So it won't be this white color that you see. Someone asked me last time if the white color is supposed to be like ice, but it's not. It's just unfinished. It's just plain foam that's on the ground there, so it's not finished. But yeah, so work on the layout will commence probably sometime this week. or this weekend. And so first there's got to be some repairs done, and then there will be landscaping done. So I'm going to start building up the mountains and the hills and the things like that. And then the whole thing will be painted, and then small shrubbery, grasses, and things like that will be installed afterwards. I don't have trees yet, so don't expect trees for a while. Trees, there's going to be like close to 200 trees, and that's going to cost a lot of money, so that's going to have to wait. But I do have all the stuff for like ground cover and whatever. So you will start seeing that take shape. I also have supplies already to start building a snow and rock shed for all the way the other side of the layout there, and so the trains will pass through that like a tunnel. And so yeah, I have that stuff already. So all this stuff will be filmed so you guys can see it on this channel. I might consider live streaming myself working on this stuff on my second channel. I haven't been on my second channel in a while because I'm too busy, but I figure if I'm going to be working on this stuff, and I already have 2 cameras that can do time-lapse for me, I figure I might as well use the third camera and then just live stream the whole thing. So, Jeffrey says, are you still working with QMI at all? No. I no longer endorse that organization. I was not happy with how I was treated there. So no, I'm not associated with QMI at all. And my friend Steve, who was executive director of QMI, has also resigned for the same reasons. So, let's see. Ray Ann says, I grew up 20 minutes from Winchester Mystery House. My friend was a docent. The flashlight tours are a fun twist. First visit, I would not recommend them, though. More a gimmick to get locals to return. Oh, I see. Yeah, I want to go through there. Ryan says, here are some of the ones I know. Hikawa Maru, the last Japanese ship to ever enter service. MV Duolos, not an ocean liner, but a preserve ship. SS Great Britain, RMS Queen Mary, and SS Nomadic. Interesting. Oh, Peden, that's sad. But, I mean, it's good to know his story, you know. Aurora says, Alex, I want to congratulate you for reaching 1/8 of the UK trip goal. Thank you, Aurora. But here's the even better news, Aurora. That's 1/8 of the goal on the fundraiser. But I've also matched that amount, which is $1,000, dollar for dollar of my own money. So I have already saved up $1,000 of my own. So technically I'm 1/4 to the goal. So, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm hoping that I'm able to... I need people to watch my videos. I will say that right here and now, because this past month has been a really bad month for my channel. No one's been watching my stuff. Like, you know, like, I think by now my video about Browns Ferry Park, that should have at least 3,000, if not 5,000 views by now. It's only got 1,500. And then, like, I posted a walkthrough tour of the Spruce Goose on my channel. That only has 800 or 900 views, I forget, but that should be at around 2,000 to 3,000 by now. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff I've been posting this month. If you guys haven't been getting notifications, just go to my channel homepage, look at the uploads list. You'll see all the stuff I've been uploading lately. I've been posting a lot of content, but only the biggest fans have been watching the content. So, and then I put out a poll on the community post asking if people like having more variety of history, or if they are just here for one thing. 92% of people said they're here for multiple subjects, but yet no one's watching the videos. So please, you know, if you want to help me get to my goal to going to the UK and taking a transatlantic journey aboard the Queen Mary, then watch the videos. That's all I ask. I get the ad revenue from the videos, so I need people to watch the videos for me to get that money. But Anywho, but yeah, I am a quarter of the way there, so I'm really excited. Jeffrey Charles says, oh wow, like people shouldn't donate to their organization, you mean, or something else was going on? I can't tell anybody what to do. If people would like to donate to QMI, then by all means they can. It is a legitimate 501c3 organization. I just don't endorse them anymore. I personally wouldn't be supporting them anymore. But that's all I can say. I can't tell you what to do. Let's see. The algorithm is bad to creators lately, and a lot of people are depressed and not watching. Yeah, I've noticed that too. I know that usually during fall time, all the kids go back to school, and so all the channels, their views kind of take a little bit of a dive, all because I think, to be honest, YouTube doesn't track the viewership of children below 13 years old, which is a good thing. But the bad thing is that children below 13 years old shouldn't be watching regular YouTube. They should have, like, YouTube Kids, because regular YouTube is not safe for children to watch. But that being said, I'm pretty sure that children under 13 make up a good chunk, I'm not going to say majority, but a good chunk of the viewership. And so, yeah, when those kids go back to school, they watch less and less content. And the only content that they do watch when they get home from school is the most popular content. So that's part of the reason why everybody's channels kind of take a seasonal dive like that. And so that might be part of the reason why my channel has kind of gone down a bit. But it's also that I'm just not getting even close to the normal subscriber amount of viewership. So that's interesting. Teresa says, have you dealt with a fire? I have. That's a really random question, but let's see. I mean, yes, I've dealt with a fire, but not like a fire that's gotten out of control. You know, I used to be a chef, so I've worked in kitchens and stuff for years. I've seen people accidentally light their pans on fire, and I've had to deal with that, and you know, I know how to do all that and very well, you know, so I've done things like that. You know, I've been camping and someone accidentally started spreading a fire because it blew out of the fire pit because of the wind. I've helped deal with that, but I mean, like, out of control house fire, no. But again, that has nothing to do with this live stream or what we talk about here. Let's see. Rayanne says, the Spruce Goose walkthrough is really excellent. I'm watching and liking. I will share with more friends too. Thank you so much, Rayanne. I think part of the reason why that Spruce Goose video wasn't getting so many views is because of the thumbnail. You have to look at it for quite a while to know what you're looking at. And that's a problem. When it comes to YouTube thumbnails, you want it to be instantaneous. You want someone to, like, glance at it and know exactly what they're looking at when they see it. Problem is, every single photograph there exists of the Hercules in the museum is not easy to tell what it looks like when it's this small and it's on a YouTube thumbnail. You can't tell what it is until you take a good moment to look at it and go, oh, that's a giant airplane. And so I tried outlining it with red, you know, it's a suggestion my friend gave me. And while I outlined it with red, it still doesn't look like an airplane. It just looks like I outlined a blob in the middle of a gray picture. So I think that's part of the reason why that video isn't doing so well, but I couldn't figure out what kind of thumbnail to put for that video because it's like, if I try to show the Spruce Goose, like a picture of it before it ever came to the museum, people might expect a different video out of that. They might think that this is a video of the Spruce Goose doing something totally different as opposed to a tour of it. So I don't want to, like, mislead people, but at the same time, there are no photographs of the Spruce Goose in the museum that look good for a video, for a YouTube thumbnail. It's the craziest thing. Like, I'm telling you guys, making video thumbnails is an art of its own. It requires a lot of, like, just skill and know-how to know, like, oh, that's a good YouTube thumbnail, you know? But yeah. Goofy Roll says, YouTube is about them making money. They don't care about content creators. That is totally true. YouTube does not care about me whatsoever, which is why I have to work really hard to make sure my videos get seen, because YouTube doesn't care if my videos get seen. Yeah, okay. Took a minute for the flavor of that to, like, absorb. I was kind of like, that tastes like water, but then after a while, like, all of a sudden the taste came in. It was that was such a weird thing. Hello, Fitzcrits. Hope you're doing okay. Taylor says, I don't know if I'll ever get the privilege to visit the UK, so I hope your trip will be sooner than that, even though you're expecting to be looking forward to those future videos. Yeah, I mean, the hope is that 2024 will be the year that we go to the UK. That's kind of the hope. I don't think 2023 is on the table. Even though I'm a quarter of the way towards the goal, the particular voyages we need to get there and back might be already booked out. So, and the ship books out like a year in advance. So it's that popular. So that's why 2023 may not be even on the cards. We might have to wait till 2024. And that being said, I also have a plan to go to New Orleans in spring. I really want to go there to film more content for the channel, because the New Orleans content is really popular, and there's a lot of history there. I want to go places. I think people are wondering, why New Orleans? I want to go places that have a lot of history. You know, I moved up here to Portland, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. There's so much, like, random history here. But when I got up here, there was, like, a handful of things. And after that handful of things, there's nothing. And I thought, oh, man, like, what am I going to make videos on? You know, stuff that pertains to my channel, reminding you guys, it has to pertain to my channel. But I got here and I was like, there's really only a handful of things that I could film around here. Everything else has nothing to do with what my channel provides. So I still have a few things up my sleeves from Portland that I can present on the channel. I haven't made them yet. You know, there's things like Pittock Mansion and stuff like that. But yeah, so I realized very quickly, I need to go somewhere. And because the UK trip is probably not going to happen until 2024, simply because it's probably already booked out, and there's no way we can get cheap prices by now. So it's going to have to wait till 2024, and so I thought, I can't wait a whole other year to provide you guys with more content, you know. I need to do something soon. So that's why I have talked to my friend, and, you know, I've talked to my family. So some people in my family, they're interested in going with us to New Orleans, and I want to go there to film a lot of historic places and make videos out of it. And that way there's still an influx of history coming into the channel while we wait. So that's kind of the plan there. Le Goose Man says, why do people hate modern cruise ship designs compared to ocean liners? They look good in their own ways, you think. I can't speak for everybody, but what I can say for myself is that I don't like the way cruise ships look. To me, they're very tacky. I don't like how they have the whole playground up on the top of the thing. I don't like how boxy shaped they are with their huge, towering, bulky wide structures. I don't like the interior decorations usually. Even the nicest cruise ships still don't look that good to me. I will say, though, that what I do like is the Cunard cruise ships and their one ocean liner, Queen Mary. Those have some good designs, except for Queen Anne. I don't like the way Queen Anne looks. So it's just, there's something about ocean liners that I think looked better. They had longer bows. They just looked sleeker and just graceful. Cruise ships don't look graceful. They look kind of like clunky boxes that kind of teeter on the ocean. They don't look graceful. And so that's why I don't like cruise ships. And I don't like what cruise ships offer either. People ask me all the time, Alex, would you ever take a cruise? My answer is no. Cruise ships don't offer me things I want. And so there's no reason for me to ever go on a cruise. Again, the closest thing that I would ever do to a cruise is a Canard cruise, because it's more dignified. It's not like, there's no heavy focus on getting drunk and playing around. Like, because that's not my thing, you know. So maybe a Cunard cruise, but even then, I'm not that interested in a Cunard cruise. I'm interested in a transatlantic crossing aboard the Queen Mary 2 for various reasons, but cruises, not so much. So, yeah. Carl, greetings. Carl says, greetings from Scotland. Oh my gosh, wow. I really want to go to Scotland, but that's not even on our itinerary for our UK trip, because it's so far away from all the other things we really want to see. But I do want to go to Edinburgh. I want to go to Edinburgh to see all the various historical structures, and I want to go there to see the Royal Yacht Britannia. But I'm telling you guys, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to go to see the Britannia or go to Edinburgh. It's too far away from where me and my friend need to go. So and Goofy Roll says, is that tea like jerk chicken where you get the first flavor, then the next, and then the next? No, it's not the tea. It's my mouth. There's like this... My mouth is really dry. I haven't drank anything at all today, so this is the first thing I'm drinking today, and it's already 4:43 p.m. So because my mouth is so dry, it took a while for the flavor of the tea to come in. It was just this dry flavor in my mouth, but... Kobe says, I would want to go to New Orleans, but some places it's a really dirty town. You know, it is, but I've been to a lot of big cities, and they're all similar in that way. There's nice areas, and then there's just dirty areas. And frankly, when you go to a big city, you can't go to a big city with high expectations. You can't expect it to be like Disneyland, you know? Like, that's what I usually tell people who live in, like, small towns and stuff, and who are thinking about going to, like, a big city for, you know, try some museums and things. I always tell them, I'm like, don't have high expectations for a big city. A big city is what a big city has always been. A dirty place full of all kinds of crazy people. And, you know, you have to ignore that and go to the places you want to go and just have fun. And so I'm looking at New Orleans the same way. People are trying to tell me, oh, why would you go to New Orleans? It's got really bad crime and stuff. I'm like, you know, I come from the LA area. I know crime areas, you know. I don't like it, but New Orleans has so much cool history and so much old buildings. I want to see it. I am willing to brave the crime. I'm willing to deal with the, you know, dirty smells of a city. You know, I mean, you know, if someone were to say today, they're like, Alex, I'm going down to San Francisco. Do you want to go with me? I know San Francisco's dirty. I know it's You know, it's pretty grimy and there's lots of crime right now. But I've grown up going to San Francisco. I know the whole city like the back of my hand. You know, I can look past the dirt and grime and just see what I want to see. And that's kind of how you have to be if you want to visit a big city. If you don't want to visit a big city, then by all means, disregard everything I just said. But, I mean, if you're looking to visit New Orleans or something like that, you just have to, like, throw away your preconceived notions of staying to the clean areas and just have fun with what you got, you know? So, that's kind of my advice to everybody. Jeffrey says, you should sell some merch as a fundraiser. I'll buy something. Jeffrey, you'd be like only one of a handful of people that would buy stuff. I used to sell merch on this channel. I think I had maybe 3 buyers in the 2 years I had a merch store. People don't really buy merch. And I'll tell you why. They don't buy merch from my channel because I don't have any particular brand. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a popular YouTuber who, let's say, has like a catchphrase. Like, there's this one YouTuber I know, his catchphrase is Ayo. And so he's thinking about selling all this merch with Ayo on it. And I thought, that's brilliant. Because people love his channel, they know Ayo, and they know it's his catchphrase. And so, if he sells any merch and he puts that on there, people have a reason to buy it. I've put stuff out, I've put merchandise out, but people don't usually buy it because there's no branding associated with it. There's no specialty of it. It's basically just like mugs and t-shirts and sweaters and hats with like my logo on it. I've tried putting other things like art and stuff like that. I think one person bought the art piece that, you know, it was they got like a tote bag with a poster on it, stuff like that. But there's nothing that I can sell that people want. Generally speaking, there's always going to be the person that really wants to support me and they'll buy something. But there's nothing I can sell that they want, and that's the problem. I got to find out what people want to buy from me. Somebody had suggested that I make models. I thought, that's great, but then that would consume all my time and I wouldn't be able to make videos for you guys. So, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like, do I focus on hand-making stuff for you guys, or do I focus on making YouTube content? Because I can't do both. I don't have the time. You know, I set this train setup, I want to say March of this year, and it's only just this week that I'm going to start repairing it and doing some upgrades to it. Just this week. So that's the only time I've had to get to building models. So it is kind of a tough thing. So but if I could find something that people really want and I can make a lot of it, or even if I don't make it, if I can sell a lot of it, then I'd do it. But I don't think there's anything like that. Ryan says, why did you get into ocean liners? I did because they were amazing and better looking than cruise ships. I got into ocean liners because of the Queen Mary. So, I gotta drink some of this. So, I was never into ocean liners. But I remember I've been to Queen Mary several times in my life. It never got me interested in ocean liners. I thought, you know, as a kid, I thought, oh, this is a cool place. That's it. It's just a cool place, you know. But January 2020, my friend Chris was like, we have to go see the Queen Mary. We have to go see the Queen Mary. And I thought, it has nothing to do with my channel. You know, my channel was all about Disney content at the time. So I thought, what am I going to do with, you know, And so I thought, all right, well, it's got some history with Disney. You know, Disney did operate the ship for a while. Maybe I can talk a bit about that and make a vlog about it. So I did some basic, like, Wikipedia research on the Queen Mary, which was full of inaccuracies. And I went there, and my goal was to film a vlog. And for those that don't know the difference between a documentary and a vlog, is a documentary is like a really well edited thing that like talks about the subject matter, whereas a vlog is where the camera's pointed at you and it's all about your experience doing something, and it's usually filmed like a video diary or a video log, which is why it's called vlog. So I went there to film a vlog, and I fell in love with the place. There was something about it. This was like, you know, the 4th time I'd visited the ship in my life, but all of a sudden everything clicked. And I just thought, you know, it felt like the ship was just reaching out to me. Just like, the ship was like, I need help. You need to blast my story over the internet and get more people interested in the Queen Mary. That's kind of what I felt like. And so that was the one way I could help the ship, was just to try to get the story out and try to generate more interest in the Queen Mary. So I started doing research on the Queen Mary. It took me a whole year to research the ship enough, because I am not like one of those historian YouTubers that just quickly like Google stuff and then just like relay to you a documentary that is full of inaccuracies. I did that for a vlog, but that was a vlog. That was not meant to be a full historical research. But I knew that if I was going to do documentaries on the ship, I needed to know my stuff about it. So it took me a whole year of researching the ship when I was finally ready to make a video about it. And as I was doing research, you know, Queen Mary was associated with other ocean liners, and I had to learn about those other ocean liners to learn things about the Queen Mary. So as I was learning about the Queen Mary, I was learning about other ocean liners, and that's kind of what got me into it. But I am not a full-on ocean liner fan. I think a lot of people forget that. They think like I'm a lot like the other YouTubers out there who like have a database of ocean liners in their head and they know everything about all of them. Like, I don't. I know a very tiny group of ocean liners surrounding the Queen Mary. That's about it. And I'm not interested in every one of them. I'm not interested in the SS United States. I'm not interested in SS Normandy. I'm not interested in, you know, the Mauretania 2. I'm not interested in, you know, the SS Atlantic, you know, things like that. I don't have a full range interest in ocean liners. It's just the select ocean liners that I think are the coolest. So, and I made a top 10 video about that. A lot of people ask me, well, why would you choose this ocean liner and not this one? I'm like, it's because this one just stood out to me, you know? So, there's things like that. That's kind of how I got into it. Taylor says, when would you need your financial goal at the latest for a 2022 trip to the UK to be possible? I'm thinking summer next year, to be honest. Yeah, I would need to have the entire amount by summer of next year to be able to do... No, I would say fall next year. Fall or autumn, depending on what you call it. Fall or autumn of next year, to have the full amount, all $8,000, to be able to book the trip for autumn of 2024. Because you have to think about it, I have to book it a year in advance. So whenever I get the full amount, I would need to be able to book the whole thing. So I would love to go, you know, I would love to go, like some people were like, they're like, oh, you should go in spring or summer instead of, you know, winter or fall. But the thing is that spring and summer are the most expensive times of the year to travel, and I can't afford that. Especially not on the Queen Mary 2. Those are the most popular voyages, is spring and summer. So those are the most expensive voyages. And my friend and I, we want to do the least expensive voyages, least expensive room. Like me and my friend Chris, we're going to share a cabin, and it's going to be a cabin without windows, like one of their smallest cabins that they have. and so we're gonna do that. We're gonna do everything the cheapest way we can do it, because the goal is to travel and to experience new places, not to, to have the grandest hotel rooms or anything like that. And so, let's see, what point was I getting at? But the other reason why we kind of want to sail in like fall or winter, and I'm not 100% on this, but my friend is. Chris really wants to see the Queen Mary handle some storms. He really does. It's really if a voyage aboard the Queen Mary is a once in a lifetime thing, then it's a once in a generation or once in a, in a century thing to be able to be on the Queen Mary while she's in the middle of a full gale storm. So, he wants to see that. I kind of want to see that. I just don't want to die. So I told him, I was like, Chris, if I die because the Queen Mary doesn't make it through a hurricane, I told him, I'm going to kill you. So that's kind of our goal here. Ooh, I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry, but you asked, do you think Queen Mary 2 will be the last ocean liner of the world? Have you heard of any project of any new ocean liners? Or once Queen Mary 2 will be retired, will there be no more ocean liners? I think it is highly likely that after Queen Mary 2 retires, there will be no more ocean liners. There are currently no plans to build other ocean liners, and there's not much of a reason to do so. Because, really, ocean liners are only good for, in this day and age, they're only good for transatlantic crossings, and there really isn't much of a reason to do those. Cruise ships do those during good weather. They change for the season to different locations, and that's the only reason to cross the ocean. Anybody who's going from New York to the UK is usually doing so by airplane, so there's really no reason to have an ocean liner. Granted, I'm going to be one of the exceptions. I hate flying in planes. I'm going to have to do it to get from Portland to New York, but nevertheless, I hate planes. And so the last thing I want is to be stuck on an airplane for, 8 to 10 hours. I think it's 10 hours to get from New York to the UK. I'm like, I'd rather be on the Queen Mary 2 for a whole week during a storm than to be on an airplane for even just 10 hours. So, I have no interest in being on an airplane. I hate airplanes. Ironic, because I'm making a video about the Spruce Goose, but, Daniel says, hey Alex, is it just me or does the bridge and other parts of the Queen Mary look similar to Mauretania? It's not you. It's on purpose. Cunard was taking, every time they made a new flagship, they took inspiration of the design of previous flagships. So that's kind of why. So Queen Mary was intended to look like Mauretania and Aquitania. So there are elements from that. And, the QE2, while she was designed to look very different, she did have some elements from other ocean liners at the time. And then the Queen Mary 2 looks a lot like a cross between the Queen Elizabeth and the QE2. So it's interesting, So yeah. Pacific says, if you go to Scotland, you should see the Clyde Puffer. Like I said, I can't go to Scotland. Yeah. Teresa says, Alex, you can do next year a 9/11 special. No, my channel only focuses on the Age of Steam, so it has to be something that takes place within the Age of Steam. Taylor Lewis says, speaking of tea, I learned through Simple History YouTube channel that some British tanks after World War II were designed so the crew could brew their tea within the safety of the tank. I heard that somewhere, and it was a joke, though. I'm pretty sure it was a joke, because I heard that somewhere also. Did we watch the same thing? But the person was joking, and the other person thought they were serious. Ken says, can you change the video thumbnails? If so, I've got a really, really good one of the Spruce Goose that really shows what you're looking at. Yeah, I can change the video thumbnails. Teresa asks, when will the Queen Mary reopen? They just say fall of this year. They haven't given an official date yet, unless they posted something today. But I haven't checked today at all. I've been too busy to check the internet for updates on the Queen Mary or of Titanic Honor and Glory. Cunard White Starlin says, I have many different Cunard posters. I don't know what you're asking. Teresa says, what part of Portland do you live? I don't actually live in Portland, but I can't tell you where I live either. Because for my own security, I don't tell people where I live. Max says, well, hello there, Alex. How are you doing? Hello, Max. I'm doing good. Ryan says, do you know that when the RMS Queen Elizabeth capsized, 5 explosions rocked the ship after the 3 fires were started? It demolished most of her superstructure. I don't know about the explosions, but I mean... Hi, Malibu Company. Teresa says, you were saying the sub next to Queen Mary is like a zoo. Yeah, because it's infested with animals. The sinking of RMS Queen Elizabeth was kind of plotted. There was an anti-imperialist group that supposedly went aboard the ship. The ship and lit the fires. So, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't doubt if it was plotted. But it wasn't plotted by C.Y. Tong. I can tell you that right now. C.Y. Tong, the owner and operator of the CY's University organization, and of course the other organization, I don't remember its name, he was a big fan of the Queen Elizabeth. He had full intentions of preserving the ship. This was not, I will repeat now, this was not about the insurance. The Queen Elizabeth, I'm sorry, was not burned down because of insurance. It was burned down because either 1, it was an accident, or 2, there was an anti-imperialist group that broke aboard the ship and lit the fires. So it was definitely not from C.Y. Tong. When he found out that the Queen Elizabeth had burned, he shed tears. And he got a written letter from Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, saying, you know, her condolences for the loss of the Queen Elizabeth, because she knew that C.Y. Tong was a good man who had every intention of preserving the ship. So, you know, yeah, it was not him. He didn't do it for the insurance money. And even after the ship burned, they didn't get insurance from it. So, yeah. I just want to make sure people know that it wasn't a internal sabotage. It was external, if there was sabotage. Ryan says, since you said the ships surrounding the Queen Mary are the ones you know about most, I'm surprised the Queen Elizabeth isn't on your top 10. It is an opinion, though, and I respect that. Ryan, it is on my top 10. If I recall, Queen Elizabeth is number 3 on my top 10, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Queen Elizabeth is on my top 10. Teresa says, I heard rumors saying that Queen Mary passengers, one of them was Hitler. No, that's not true. Max says, I think your audio goes a bit ahead of the live stream. Yeah, it does, and the reason why is because the camera is not hooked up to the microphone. So this is a USB microphone. The camera doesn't take USB microphones. So the audio is on a different timing, and there isn't an easy way for me to just click and fix it. So I can't do that right now. Cunard White Starlin says, I don't get why the media always says that the Queen Mary is a rusting scrap heap and that the ship makes no money, because that's not true. The Mary made Long Beach popular. It did. You know, the media likes to... There's something you need to know about media, everybody. The media likes to... I don't know, for lack of better words, publish things that have kind of a shock factor to it. You know? That's how they get the clicks. That's how they get the views, you know? It's the same reason with clickbait on YouTube. The reason why clickbait even exists on YouTube is because people click on it. It's interesting, you know? It's the reason why people like tabloid news. Like, I get notifications every day of tabloid news. Oh, you know, King Charles shuns Meghan Markle. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, they're just making up stuff all the time just to create new drama. So it's the same thing with the Queen Mary. You know, they take what one person says. I remember they got some random person from Long Beach, not even official or anything. He's just a citizen of Long Beach. They asked him, what do you think of the Queen Mary? He goes, oh, it's a rusting hulk and it's going to sink anytime. And that's the story they went with. Because that was much more interesting than the reality of the story, which is actually she's in pretty good shape for her age and she's undergoing repairs. That story is too boring. They'd rather share a story of doom and gloom. So that's the problem with media. And, you know, it's just... I really despise it, you know? And it's funny because I know people who have tried to reach out to the media and give them an accurate story, but the media doesn't call back because they don't want the accurate story. They want the story of the doom and gloom. That's the thing that sells the papers. So you can't trust what you read online, unfortunately. So that's why when I was part of QMI, we would go straight to the city to ask our information. And we would just say, okay, how did this go? What is that? What's going on here? Blah, 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 you know? And so that's how I was so in tune with what was going on. And, but yeah, you know, but the media will publish whatever they want, and that's what people roll with. So I can't even tell you how many people are like, oh, did you know the Queen Mary's gonna capsize? I'm like, and I try to be really nice about it, but some people are aggressively on the side of the newspapers. And they go, oh, well, how do you know she's not going to collapse? I'm like, because I have the reports. Like, I have the reports that literally detail the condition of the ship direct from the surveyors. I'm like, what do you have? You have a newspaper that tells you something. You know, I'm like, I used to get so frustrated. Oh, goodness, more tea. Yes, I've heard of SS Ile-de-France. I only like the Ile-de-France before her post-war refit. Rytupiep says, could revenue from the videos of your UK trip help fund other trips? Absolutely. So I'll give you guys an example of why this UK trip is such a good idea. When I went to the Queen Mary last, remember I said earlier in the live stream, I was there only filming a vlog. So I had only intended to make one video out of that footage. I shot about a total of a little over an hour of footage. And most of the footage was just the camera facing me while I was talking and experiencing stuff. But the tiny portion of footage that remained of just the rest of the ship, it just kind of sat in my archives for a while because I made the vlog got its views, I was done with it for all intents and purposes. But a year later, you know, after the pandemic happened and I was doing research on the ship and I finally decided I wanted to make videos about it, I realized, uh-oh, I have no official B-roll footage of the Queen Mary to use in my videos. And I had to use whatever I had, and what I had was the vlog footage. So I will carefully use that vlog footage because, again, it was mostly, the camera was on me. So if I showed a hallway or something, that's because I turned the camera around physically and you could see like a hallway. And I would take that portion of the footage and slow it down to like 33% of its original speed. And I would use that for like things in my videos. So I had to be really crafty with whatever like little bits of footage I could pull of the ship out of the vlog. And so I realized soon after that I was making tons of videos. I've made somewhere around 30 videos regarding the Queen Mary, and all of those videos at some point use the footage I shot that day in January of 2020. And altogether, those videos have earned me hundreds of thousands of views and lots of money for keeping the channel going. And so if you think about it, those hundreds of thousands of views and, you know, and all the thousands of subscribers that came from that all stemmed from that 1 hour of footage I shot on the Queen Mary. Now, if I go on this UK trip, I'm going to be filming things in B-roll, which means it's not going to be a vlog. It's not going to be like the camera always on me. I've learned my lesson from doing that on the Queen Mary and then never being able to go back to the Queen Mary again to get my B-roll. So everything will be shot with B-roll. And if you're wondering what is B-roll, look at my Spruce Goose tour video. It's a narrated tour. I just posted it like last week. And you will see that everything in that video was shot in a B-roll manner. So it's just excess video footage for what I need. And that's exactly how I'm going to film things in the UK trip. That way, if I need to make, like, let's say I go to Notre Dame and I make one video, but then like 2 months later, I realize I have another video and I need Notre Dame footage. I can go back to my footage of Notre Dame and reuse it. And so I'm estimating that I could make about 50 to 60 first generation videos from all the stuff I film on that UK trip. That's like 50 to 60 videos of just the subjects that we're going to see. From those videos, I can actually make other videos of like fun facts and random things, and that could be another 120 videos out of that for a grand total of 180 videos. So it's crazy how much I can do, you know, and I'll have that footage forever. So I can always go back to it and reuse the various footage of the various places I go as my B-roll shots for future videos. So that's the beauty of it. And especially when I go to New Orleans and I film stuff there, I can reuse that footage for future things as well. So that's the whole point of this. And so while it will be like a vacation in the sense that I'm going and traveling, it most certainly will not be relaxation time, because my friend and I, we're going to have a busy schedule of places to go and things to film. Well, mostly me. I'll be filming most of the stuff. So it's not like we're going to be sitting around and like drinking and relaxing. Like, we have a schedule to keep. And so that's why people go, oh, you should go to Edinburgh, or oh, you should go to Plymouth. And I'm like, I don't have time. We've got other things that are on our list. Like, we have to meet these time schedules because it's not a vacation. It is a filming trip for the channel. So that is why. I feel like I've been talking about that for a while. Let me try to answer some questions here. Cunard White Starlin says, do the Long Beach City officials want to keep the Queen Mary too? Wait, no, I misread that. Do Long Beach City officials want to keep the Mary? Yes, they do, because the Queen Mary earns them a lot of money. So the Queen Mary accounts for 1/6 of LA County's annual tourism. 1/6. That means if I took a pie and I divided it up into 6 pieces, you take one of those pieces, that represents the Queen Mary. That is a huge chunk of pie. So, yeah. So the Queen Mary accounts for 1/6 of LA's tourism, but also the Queen Mary up until 2019 was accounting for $209 million a year in tourism revenue. $209 million a year in tourism revenue to the county of Los Angeles. That's a big chunk of revenue. Some people say, oh, she doesn't earn that much money. She doesn't earn enough money to take care of herself. No, she really does. It's just that prior organizations that had control of the ship were just using that money for various other things that I can't talk about because I don't want to get like sued for stuff, but they take that money and they run with it. So that's why the Queen Mary is in such bad state. It's not because she doesn't earn enough money for herself. She does. She gets, sometimes 3 million visitors a year. That's a big deal. It could be better, but it's a big deal. So yeah, there's no reason why the Queen Mary couldn't be successful. It's just that these companies are usually very greedy and they just do not want to invest back into the ship. So yeah. Taylor says, if you could preserve one Cunard ship built prior to Queen Mary, which would it be? RMS Mauretania. Do you guys like having... I've lowered the camera for the trains so you can get more of a normal eye view of the train. No one's commented on it. I've heard of Silver Dollar City. I'm not interested in the history of its railroads. Teresa says, is it true that Queen Mary will capsize? Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. The reason is because, first of all, for the ship to capsize, she has to be leaking seawater. So she's got an outer layer of steel that surrounds the hull of the ship. That steel was measured by ultrasound last year in 2021, just before November. So they did an ultrasound of the whole ship. All the steel plates have an average thickness of 1 inch. Now, in comparison, most cruise ships have a thickness of 1/4 to 1/2 inch of steel plating. That's not very thick. Queen Mary's is 1 inch average right now. So, and there's no signs of leaking. So there's no signs of like hull plates completely busted out or anything like that. No signs of leaking. And even then, even if she does, her hull is divided into 2 layers. So there's an outer layer and an inner layer, separated by 6 feet of space. Within that 6 feet of space, there are 166 separate compartments. Watertight separate compartments. So even if one area had a leak, it would be an area maybe the size of my apartment, which is big, but not big enough to capsize the ship, not by a long shot. And even then, most of those tanks were used for water ballast anyway. So even if it filled with water, it wouldn't actually capsize the ship because it was designed to fill with water for ballast. Then there's the inner layer of steel, which is also about 1 inch thick. Some areas are thinner, but again, another thing you need to look for is leaking. There's never been a major seawater leak on the Queen Mary. There's no water pouring in from the ocean. Nothing like that. People have seen pools of water inside the Queen Mary, but that's from internal plumbing leaks. That's from like there was even a sewage leak one time. The sewage leaked and it stank up a whole room. There was another time that a gasket there. So they have. I told you about the watertight compartments. Some of them are designed for ballast, for water ballast. And one time, one of the gaskets, the rubber gaskets along the lid of the tank, had just degraded. And so the water from that tank came out and spilled into the room. And it made the ship lean a little bit towards starboard a little bit. But they fixed the problem, pumped new water in there, sealed it up. Ship is fine. So, yeah, there's no issues of the ship leaking. Like, even if the water penetrated the exterior layer, it would have to get through a lot of safety features just to get into the ship. And then the ship is also getting 2 of its watertight bulkheads rebuilt. And that means even if water came into the interior of the ship, it won't spread to the whole ship, because the watertight bulkheads will prevent it from doing that. And then it's getting 11 brand new bilge pumps with automatic water intrusion alarms. So even if water did get into the ship and a lot of it was coming in, the bilge pumps would automatically activate and start pumping out that water. So there's really no way that the ship could sink or capsize. And the only reason why the press was printing that was because they were speaking to a former surveyor of the ship, and he did say, if the this is very careful wording, you guys, if the ship continues to be neglected, it could lead to partial capsize. That doesn't mean it's going to capsize now. It doesn't mean that it will capsize. He said that if the ship continues to be neglected, it could lead to partial capsize. So the newspaper goes, oh, we can kind of work with the way he said that. And so they immediately post on the front thing, engineer says the ship could capsize. And it's just like, that's what the news does, you guys. That's what they do. They take the words and then they make it sound different. So you have to be really careful. Yeah, there's really nothing wrong with the Queen Mary's hull. I mean, obviously the Queen Mary could use a good freshing up. I mean, that's without a doubt, but there's nothing wrong with her hull. Again, I have the surveys. So these newspapers, they're talking about what's on the surveys, but they're not showing the surveys. They're not showing what the engineers and the surveyors were writing down. I have those. And they don't say the same thing that the newspapers are saying. They say something ever so slightly different with a completely different meaning behind it. And so, yeah. So that's how I know the Queen Mary is not in that kind of condition. Ryan says, what's your favorite tea/breakfast? My favorite tea is Earl Grey. And I like the Twinings Earl Grey the most. This today is breakfast tea, but I like Earl Grey the most. Teresa says they say they're gonna try sailing her again. No, that's not true. I'd be really curious to know where you heard that, because whatever newspaper says that, they're lying. Yeah, they're not gonna sail her again. It's not possible. Justin says, really good point on the earnings potential for the Queen Mary. Can you imagine how much she would earn after a thorough refit? Probably more, so long as the right steps are taken for her publicity. Oh, I totally agree, yeah. If they had refurbished the ship the right way, and if they implement the things that tourists want on a modern, tourist attraction. I don't mean a modern ship, I mean a modern tourist attraction. They could do some really amazing things with a relatively smaller budget. You know, like there's some things that big museums are investing millions of dollars in that you could kind of do a bit cheaper on the Queen Mary and still get a similar outcome. And it would make the Queen Mary not feel like, okay, so we want the Queen Mary to look original. Of course, absolutely. But there are things you can implement within the infrastructure of the museum to make it feel more like a modern museum experience. So interactivity, and especially ways to get in, to get immersed in the history of the ship. So one of the things that some museums are doing is they're encouraging people to come dressed up. They're encouraging people, I mean, obviously some people come to the Queen Mary dressed up, but the Queen Mary never says, come dressed up. It's just that people who love to dress up in 1930s garbs, they go there dressed up. But there should be events and things held every day that encourages more people to come dressed up and to get immersed in it. Look at what local attractions are doing. Again, I've been in the tourism industry for 11 years. I've been educated in hotels and tourism and how to identify, you know, what are the tourism trends of the day. So I know what people are doing nowadays. Long gone is the days when you walk up to a glass partition and look at a little sign that tells you what's going on in front of you. Those days are over. There are new ways of making museums interesting without putting a plaque in front of you. And it doesn't have to be intrusive. One of the littlest things you could do is you could get an app that people download on their phone, and it gives you access to like everything you need of the Queen Mary. You can make reservations for your dinner or your lunch. You can make reservations for a special show that's happening. Like they do that 4D theater thing aboard the ship. You can get a reservation for that without having to actually physically walk down there and get a reservation for it. You can book tours on an app, you know, and then there's also other things too. The app can have special games on it that kind of teach you things about the ship, get children involved, and you can go up to, let's say they refurbish the second class library, right? You can have it so when you go on your phone and enter the app, you can learn about what was in the library, how it was built, instead of having a plaque on there. And then there's other things too where there could be like a scavenger hunt. So it says, in this library is a special book with a certain significance, and it helps you get to the next step in the game. What is it? And you have to find it, you know? So there's things like that. There's ways to interact with it. There's a first-class barbershop that could be restored to being a barbershop again, and it could be behind a transparent glass that turns opaque whenever it's not in use. What you do is you go on your app, you play a little bit of a scavenger hunt game if you get the right things right, and you activate the feature. You can make the glass go from opaque to transparent, and then you can get a view all on your own of the inside of the barbershop, something that not everybody walking past it will be able to see, which is just one of those little things you can do to enhance the experience. So there are various things you can do that are non-intrusive to the ship that can update the experience of the museum of the ship. And these are things that really don't cost as much as what some museums are doing. And it would just elevate the experience so much more aboard the Queen Mary. Hello, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Max says, I think the best thing for Queen Mary would be a dry dock, which is also really expensive for such a big ship. They want to build one. They do. They want to build a dry dock nearby. They can't permanently dry dock the Queen Mary. I know a lot of people suggest that. Like, why don't they just permanently dry dock the Queen Mary? First of all, she'd be the largest ship to ever be permanently dry docked. We don't yet know how a ship of that size will react to being permanently dry docked. But the other thing, too, is you can't permanently dry dock a ship that large in Southern California. There's too many earthquakes. It would create a whole other set of earthquake issues related to the ship that, frankly, no one is prepared to spend money on. So it's just better if she floats. She's been safe all these years. Even in the 1994 Northridge earthquake, she survived that without a scratch because she was floating. So, yeah, it's better if she floats. Hello, Tyler. Max says, it's quite hard to maintain 86-year-old piping on 86-year-old ocean liner. To be honest, some of that piping was actually installed in 1976, so it's not all of it is original. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the electrical, actually, in fact, all the electrical on the ship is from 1971. Most of the plumbing on the ship is from 1971 or later. So yeah, it's just from the 70s, just plumbing that just leaks and stuff. Teresa says the hull was damaged. The hull wasn't damaged. You know, that's part of the reason why she's got that breakwater around her. The breakwater prevents any ships from colliding with the Queen Mary. Her hull is not damaged. Yeah. Yeah, Justin's right. Ships back then were just built way better than what they're built today. Today's ships are built with a sense that, well, they're only here to perform a certain duty. They're not gonna be like, the Tom Cruise of the Tom Cruise of the shipping industry. They're just here to perform a simple cruising duty. But ocean liners way back then were built super tough because you just never know what they're going to run into. They might strike an iceberg. They might run into a hurricane. They might be struck by a 92-foot rogue wave. They might get the full brunt of a water spout hitting them. They just had to be built super, super strong in a way that cruise ships just aren't built that way for, because cruise ships don't go through that. Most cruise ships, they go to areas that just are not that crazy of weather or stuff like that. Not to say that cruise ships haven't gone through that. It's just that they try not to go through that. Teresa says, I've heard that United States will sail on Queen Mary. Well, there was a time when a company was interested in acquiring the SS United States and making her sail as a cruise ship. That company declined years and years ago, because it wasn't feasible for them. It was too expensive and it wasn't worth it. Queen Mary, she'll never sail again. I would be going on too long here to explain it, but I have a video about it, Teresa, if you want to look at it. The video is called The video is called Getting the Queen Mary to Sail Again, and I believe it's on my Everything About Anything playlist, and it talks about all the reasons why the Queen Mary will not sail again, ever. She just won't. It's not possible. I mean, if you have an infinite amount of money, then yes, anything is possible, but the Queen Mary is owned by the city of Long Beach. They do not have an infinite amount of money, and there's no reason to make her sail again, because there literally just isn't enough business to make her profitable in this day and age. So it's just not going to happen. Let's see. Yeah, SS United States won't be sailing again either, just like Justin said. Cunard White Stallion says, do you have an interest in old buildings? Some, yes. I like buildings from the Victorian age, the Edwardian age, and the Art Deco age. I also like some, I I like some castles and forts, some palaces. I don't have like a wide, all-encompassing interest in all buildings. It's just very specific buildings. And there's some Googie style building architecture that I like, but I am ultimately an architecture fan, so I do like that stuff, and that's exactly what I'm going to be filming when I go to the UK, is a lot of architecture. Gump, how's it going? I'm doing good. Hey Shiloh, how is it going? Ryan asks, how do they put the Scorpion submarine next to the Queen Mary? They, first of all, they towed it to Long Beach. And then from there, they removed part of the, there's a breakwater wall around the ship. It's done with piles of rocks. They removed one of those walls to push the submarine in. And people think like, oh, that wall, makes it impossible. And no, it's not. It's just a pile of rocks. They can lift it right out. That's what they did. So they in the late 1990s, they had a bunch of earth movers there. They removed one of the rock walls, and they had tugboats push the submarine in. That's how they got the Queen Mary into that area in the first place. They had two of the rock walls built. The third one wasn't built, and they used tugboats to push the Queen Mary into that space. And that's how they'll get her out again. If they need to put her through a dry dock, they'll just remove the rock wall behind the Queen Mary. They'll get tugboats in there, and then they'll pull her back out of the rock wall. So, yeah. Cunard White Song says, my auntie had a terrace house that was built in 1888, and when it turned 100 in 1988, tree roots had damaged the house, so the left-hand wall was pulled down and rebuilt. The house still exists at 134 years. Oh, that's pretty cool. Do you know what style the house is built in? I'd love to know that. What style the house is built in. Teresa says, have you seen Poseidon Adventure? Yes, the 1977 movie? Yeah, it was really good. Justin says, I personally love old school museums, but I understand that many people today need things that are much more interactive, things you can literally walk through and be immersed in. Queen Mary's perfect. You know, I've always been satisfied with being the kind of person that just reads a plaque and looking at what's in front of me. But I feel like interactive museums actually make the experience all the more better, because you get to touch things, you get to be in that place, and the Queen Mary could definitely do that. The Queen Mary, in fact, is set up that way. It'd be so easy to convert her into an interactive museum, because she's just already built that way. You can already walk up to the ship and touch the railings. You can touch almost anything you want on the ship, to be honest. So it's already set up that way. So it wouldn't be too hard. Brian says, they used to have the largest dry dock in Long Beach, but it was destroyed when Long Beach built the container shipyard. It was part of the naval shipyard. Yeah, I know. Sylvia says, morning, Alex. Loved your book reading, enjoying the images in the background as well. Have you done something to the lighting on the miniature train set? The colors look deeper. Yeah, I used to have blue light on there, but today I did green. I was just trying to change it up. I would have done red, but then it would have looked like you're looking like, you know, like the train is like in the gates of hell or something. So, but I went with green. I'm not really digging the green. But again, everybody, this will be like the last time you see the train set as it looks like this, because sometime this week or even this weekend, I'm going to start work on landscaping and some more repairs on the train set. So it will not be running, I think, on Sunday. I don't think it'll be running on Sunday. And you'll start seeing videos where I'll show you how the landscape is taking shape, and it'll be painted and everything. So it'll all be painted to look like the Columbia River Gorge. I live, you know, pretty close to the Columbia River Gorge. It's a beautiful area. I love it so much. And I love everything about it. So I'm going to try to make this area kind of look like the Columbia River Gorge. So yeah, you'll see that. There'll be landscape stuff, so you'll see grass and bushes and things like that. But trees, I have to get those some other time. They're too expensive. So, but there will be grass and plants and stuff, and there will be a new structure as well. I'm building a snow and rock shed that will be in between the two bridges over there. So it'll be like a tunnel that the train goes through. So yeah, it'll be really neat. So have your last final looks at the train set as it looks right now, because it will be changing. And I couldn't have done it without the folks who have donated towards it, because some folks were like, oh, I really want to see you work more on it, so they've donated towards that, and so I was able to get some more adhesive and stuff like that to go on the train set. There's like spider webs all over the cars. So they'll have to be thoroughly dusted. I'm also going to take the opportunity while the train set is down for maintenance and work. I'm going to take the time to clean all the wheels again. A lot of people don't know, but when you have these train sets, after a while, all the wheels become dirty and they don't pick up electricity as well. So I have to clean all the wheels. And that takes a while. Somebody made the remark that it's like taking care of a real railroad but in miniature, and that's totally true. It requires maintenance. Things always have to be done. I mean, heck, before I even use this locomotive for every live stream, I have to oil it before I use it. So it is like taking care of a real railroad in some aspects, which is kind of what makes it kind of cool when you think about it. Let's see. Luke says, would Queen Mary 2 survive striking a mine? Most ships wouldn't, so I wouldn't doubt if Queen Mary 2 did not survive that. Most ships would not survive that. Rytupiup says, what is your favorite building? Oh, that's a question I've never gotten before. What's my favorite building? Of the buildings I've been to, I really don't know. I've seen some cool buildings, but I don't remember them. Trying to think if there's a building here in Portland I've been to that I thought was really cool, but like the Benson is really cool. But the Benson is not my favorite building. I feel like I've been to a cooler building, but I can't think of one. But the Benson is a beautiful building, that's for sure. I've been to some buildings in Old Town San Diego. Those are really cool. I don't remember the name of it though. There was like a It was like a farmhouse, but it was huge. It was like a 3-story farmhouse, and now today it's a museum. But it's right there in the middle of Old Town. That was pretty cool. Oh, I know my favorite building is. I know. I've been to Tombstone, Arizona, and I've been to the Birdcage Theater. That is my favorite building. It is not particularly beautiful, but it's old and original, and it looks like it was opened yesterday in the 1880s as a theater and brothel. So it's cool. If you guys have never seen it, at least Google search it. The Birdcage Theater of Tombstone, Arizona. So cool. It is so original. And I've been in there, and I was telling my friend the other day, because we watched the movie Tombstone, and I told him, I was like, you look up in the Birdcage Theater, and to this day there are bullet holes in the ceilings, and the paint has never been repainted. It's still the original paint and everything. Like, everything about that building is original. They didn't do any maintenance on it at all. So if you see like thumbprints on things, you know, it it probably is original thumbprints from the cowboy days. So yeah, it's crazy. I love that building. It's beautiful in its oldness. Yeah. Max says, could we consider Queen Mary and Queen Mary 2 as sisters? No, technically they're not, because the definition of sister ships is that they were built around the same time with the same blueprints and at the same shipyard. So those are the 3 factors that have to be the thing. Queen Mary and Queen Mary 2 were built 2 different times with 2 different sets of blueprints and 2 completely different shipyards. But if you want to know a fun little fact, the same shipyard that built the Queen Mary 2 is the same shipyard that built the SS Normandy so many years ago. Cool little fun fact. Legoose says, would you rather sail on a Cunard ship or a White Star Line ship? I'd rather sail on a Cunard ship. They just look better to me. I think they're more beautiful. Sylvia says, I love green. It brings out the timber look. I love the idea of QE2 being a museum. Keeping it as a hotel is going to always put the dollar above historical accuracy and preservation. I mean, I would love the QE2 to be a museum, but the ship has been altered so much since it came to Dubai. I mean, the QE2 hardly looks like the QE2 anymore. It doesn't look bad. I think as a hotel it looks beautiful, the QE2 in Dubai. But it certainly doesn't look original anymore. And they haven't kept it as a museum. So it's still very much a brand new structure now. But that being said, it could have been a lot worse. You know, it could have been scrapped. So I'd rather have the QE2 still around and still at least be able to walk through the same rooms, you know. But yeah, but I wouldn't say the QE2 is necessarily a museum. They have preserved some things, but not a lot. Justin says, Alex, I remember you explaining very well several videos ago about why the Queen Mary can't sail again, and that if she was going to sail again, she would be forced to be unrecognizable. Can't imagine. Yeah, in my video, I think it's called Getting the Queen Mary to Sail Again. I talked all about that. And yeah, she would be unrecognizable. Because some people think, like, literally, like, oh, just give her some new engines and she'll sail again. It's like, no, you know, the Maritime Code doesn't work that way. You know, she's been out of commission for a very, very long time. To get her back into working order, they would have to abide by a lot of maritime rules. I couldn't tell you which ones because I don't know that much about it. But what I can tell you is that she would be pretty much unrecognizable. Especially, besides the Maritime Code, like set that aside. If you want her to turn a profit, she will need a lot more rooms than what she has. A lot more. And that means building extra spaces above the ship. Have you guys seen what they did to SS France when it became the I think it was called SS Norway? when they turned her into a cruise ship, they actually added extra decks on top of her. That's what they would have to do to Queen Mary. They would have to add extra decks to the Queen Mary to have a whole bunch of new balcony rooms, because there are people who are going to demand to know why they didn't build balcony rooms. I know a lot of people go like, oh, but people love the ocean liner experience. Well, the thing is, we don't really know that for sure. We know that some people do, like me. I love, old ocean liners. But we don't really know yet if there are people out there who exist today who would like the experience of an ocean liner that doesn't have balconies, that doesn't have good views of the sea, and that is almost entirely enclosed everywhere with tiny cramped spaces. We don't really know if that would be successful today. I doubt it would be, because there would be no way you could fill the Queen Mary to capacity with ocean liner fans every single day for her career. You can't. There aren't that many people out there. It's the same reason why people wonder why, if the Queen Mary is now a haunted attraction, how come it's not super, super, super successful? Well, because think about it. There are a lot of paranormal enthusiasts out there, but you can't fill the ship every day with paranormal enthusiasts. There's just not that many. So it's the same thing with ocean liner fanatics. The only way you could get the Queen Mary to look the same and still sail on a daily basis would be if she was filled with ocean liner fanatics who don't mind not having modern innovations on a ship. It would be really difficult. So, Matthew says, when will Queen Mary be dry docked? There's no schedule for that. They don't have a dry dock for the Queen Mary. They can't take her anywhere that has a dry dock. So they would have to build a new one. And there is no current plans at the moment for building a dry dock. They want to, but wanting to and doing it are two different things. So I will just say, to summarize, that there is no current plans to dry dock the Queen Mary, simply because there isn't one. There's no dry dock. So, Lightning McQueen says, quick, get a photo of the train set as it is. It's historic. I have photos of it as it is. But yeah, the train set will be changing in the coming days. And it will be documented on video, so you guys will be able to see that on the channel. I might use my second channel to live stream me doing the work. So you guys, if you want to see that, let me know. The second channel is the Alex Adner channel, spelled A-D-N-E-R. That's all it is, Alex Adner. I haven't been on that channel in a while, so there has been no updates to it. I haven't even checked comments on it because I've been too busy with this channel. But I was thinking if I do live stream it, it'll be on that channel. But the update videos will be on this channel, since that's where my first update video is. It's on this channel. So, but yeah, it'll be on there for you guys to see. Let me tell you right now, building models is not a quick process. Don't expect to see like videos every other day about it. Building models takes a long time. So it is a slow glacial pace. But that's why I like building models, It takes attention to detail, and it takes patience. Hey, Pokey Smoochie, glad to see you here. Ryan says, on the last live stream, you said you have a Queen Elizabeth photo collection. Do you have a Queen Mary photo collection? If so, what's your favorite picture? Oh, I definitely have a Queen Mary photo collection. That's how I make my videos. You see my photo collections all the time. In fact, you're seeing it right now. Some of the photos that I have of the Queen Mary are rotating up above. But yeah, I do have a Queen Mary photo collection. What's my favorite photo of the Queen Mary? Well, funny enough, my favorite photo of the Queen Mary is not a very detailed one. I have a photo of the Queen Mary, December of 1942, getting pounded by large ocean swells measuring somewhere around 60 to 70 feet tall. And all it is because it's a storm, and the picture was taken in a storm. So all you can see is the silhouette of the Queen Mary, and her bow is completely submerged by a massive swell that is coming up and hitting the superstructure. And so, but again, there's no detail because it was taken in a storm. It was really hard to see, but it's showing the silhouette of the Queen Mary getting hit by a huge 60 to 70 foot ocean swell. That is my favorite photo because it illustrates how well that ship handled such massive storms. If a cruise ship got hit by an ocean swell that big, there would be catastrophic damage. Queen Mary survived it just fine because she was an ocean liner. So, yeah, pretty cool. Cunard, I also have a video collection. So if people are wondering, do you also have a collection of vintage videos of Queen Mary? Of course. That's how I make my videos. So every time you see my documentary videos about the Queen Mary or about other ships, I have collected that old footage you're seeing on any one of my videos. I've collected it. I have it in my archives. So so yeah, that's not something I just like pull off the internet then I delete it. I literally keep it. I keep it and I store it in an organized collection. Teresa says, how much bugs do you get over in Portland? Not many, to be honest. I was just thinking about that yesterday. This year, I have had a spider in here. But just one. When I lived in Orange County, there were spiders in my house every day. I was killing spiders every single day. But the last time I saw a spider in this apartment was like a month ago. And before that, it was like 2 months before that. So I really don't get that many bugs. Right now there is a beetle that is going around outside. It's like some kind of beetle. But it doesn't come into my house. But there are a lot of types of bugs. I was talking last night to my friend, though, that we don't get crickets. That's interesting, because in Southern California, there's crickets everywhere. I told him that one time I woke up in my bed with a cricket in my hair. So we always had crickets. But up here, I noticed that there's no crickets. And I think it's because we have so many frogs. Like, we have frogs everywhere. And they eat all the bugs. So I love the frogs. I mean, I don't want to touch them, but I love them because they eat all the bugs. So I love that we have all these frogs. And sometimes when I'm on a walk and I'm going through the buildings, you can see the frogs on the walls and stuff like that. One of the apartments that was empty and was being shown off to prospective, lease holders, they entered one of the apartments and it was like infested with frogs because somebody had left the back door open. So there were frogs all over the apartment. And the cleaning crew had to go and get rid of all the frogs. But that was pretty funny. But yeah, but I'll tell you what's cool about the frogs, though, is like we have a pond somewhere near our apartment complex. And when you walk by the pond at night, you can hear a loud chorus of frogs. I mean loud. It is like hearing a stadium full of people shouting. It is that loud. And it's like, holy moly. But I love it. Yeah, I love it. We don't have too many bugs. But I'll tell you, the spiders we do have are pretty big. Yeah. So, thankfully, those big ones don't come into the apartment. But, NCC says, speaking of Tombstone, I'm related to Wyatt Earp. That's pretty cool. Rightopia says, what is the tallest building you have been to the top of? I hate going up to the top of tall buildings. So, but I've never been to the top of a tall building. But I have been inside of a tall building. When I was a teenager, we were going to San Francisco for a weekend. We booked a room in a really high-rise hotel. And I remember our hotel room was on the 18th floor. I did not like looking out the windows. I have an extreme fear of heights, so I did not like looking out the windows. But Yeah, I was on the 18th floor of a high-rise hotel, and yeah, so, but I've never been to the top of a high-rise building or a skyscraper, and I don't plan to. Like, I would love to visit the Empire State Building, but I'll tell you, I don't think anybody can convince me to go to the top of it. Even though it's like a common tourist area, you know, like, I don't think anybody can convince me to go up there. And I remember my dad came to visit me last year for Christmas, and he and I went up to Seattle, and we were going to go up to the top of the Space Needle. And as I was waiting in that line, or not, we weren't in line, but we were going to go in line, but to get in line, you had to pay like $30 per person to go up to the Space Needle, and I was like, that is ridiculously expensive. Thankfully it was, because when I looked up and I was like, oh, that's where we're going, I was like, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. It's too high. It's too scary. I can't do it. I don't have the mental strength to do that. Ken says, I've already had to clean my Owen 30. The front pilot wheel started squeaking, and I used dry bike chain lube on them. Worked wonders. Oh, that's good. Yeah. The Owen 30 locomotives, they tend to have issues with squeaking and stuff because, as you've noticed, they're really heavy and they're made of like some heavy-duty materials. So they're... Like, I've never had to deal with squeaking in N scale or HO scale, because most all the parts of those scales are plastic, except for the wheels, of course. But yeah, so the ON 30, there's a lot of metal. So, but yeah, I have to oil this locomotive up every time before I use it. It's crazy. Let's see. Yeah, Sylvia, I still think that the Queen Mary should be more of a family attraction. But I think a lot of people don't understand what I mean by family attraction. I think they picture like a bunch of like little children running and screaming everywhere, and that's not at all what I mean. What I mean is that you don't want to pigeonhole the ship into being just a haunted ship. Like, you want to widen the appeal, and by widening the appeal, you're already making it more interesting to teenagers and young children. That enough is enough to do it. Another way that you get children interested is you have interactive experiences for them. So it doesn't have to be like balloons and part. And one guy angrily wrote to me. He says, what did he say? He said, I don't want to see like plastic party animals everywhere or something like that. I'm like, what makes you think I would ever suggest that? You know, like, that is not at all what I mean by making it more appealing to children. It's just, don't make it so scary looking. And that already is enough. You know, kids will come. It's a ship. Kids will come. But they're not coming because the parents know that the ship is currently, you know, a haunted museum thing. So it's not the kind of place everybody wants to bring their kids to. Only some select people will bring their kids there. But if you stop marketing it that way, you can already start appealing to more children. So, yeah. So I think some people just don't understand what I mean by making it more appealing to children. Teresa says, is it true about Jackie the Ghost? No, she's a made-up character that was created by Disney. Hey, James, how's it going? Teresa says, are you scared of spiders? Absolutely. I have arachnophobia, a true arachnophobia. I do become paralyzed in fear if I am near a spider. Cunard White Starlin says that the house was a 1888 Victorian-style terrace house, and it had timber floors, lattice iron railings outside. When my grandma pulled the floorboards up, she found newspapers from the late 1890s and World War II, World War I. Wow, that's pretty cool. Sylvia Reed says, what sort of frogs are they? I don't know. But they're little dull green frogs. So they're green. They're not bright green, but they're dull green. Kind of like an olive green color. They're no bigger than 2 inches when they're at their full size. So they're like 2 inches long from head of tail to the back of... I'm sorry, from the back of their tail to the front of their head. 2 inches long. They're just common frogs. My sister found a toad the other day, though. I was like, that's a big, ugly looking toad. But, yeah. Brian says, you're not alone in the fear of heights thing. I'm just plain chicken. Yeah, I am so afraid of heights. I remember I went to the Grand Canyon with my then husband at the time, and he and my cousin went to the edge of the canyon. I didn't want to go anywhere near the edge, but they actually went out because there was no railing or anything. People could just walk up to the edge of the canyon. And he went up all the way over to this rock that was teetering off the edge of the canyon. And I kept saying, don't go out there because there's nothing underneath that rock. But he couldn't see it, so he thought it was like a column of rock. But I went just a little bit around the bend, and I could see the front face of that. And all it was literally a boulder sticking out of the cliff. And I took a picture of it to show him later on. I was like, look, you were standing on something that could have easily just broken off the edge of the cliff, and you would have taken a 3,000-foot tumble to the bottom. So, yeah, that was just... Oh my gosh. Yeah, I did not want to get anywhere near the edge of the Grand Canyon. And, but I had fun because I stayed on the paved walking paths that were at least a good, 20 feet from the edge. And that was pretty cool. The Grand Canyon was like a painting. I didn't expect it because it's so big that no matter where you walk, the perspective of the other side of the canyon doesn't really change that much. So it looks like you're just walking past a flat canvas. It's so weird. So weird. Brown Palace. Denver is awesome. You know where I want to go in Colorado is, well, the Durango and Silverton Railroad, that's for sure. But besides the Durango and Silverton, I want to go to that hotel that inspired The Shining. So there's a hotel there, the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel. I want to go to the Stanley Hotel because that just looks plain cool. Like, that looks really neat, and it's a beautiful hotel. There's also the hotel that they filmed The Shining at, the exterior shots at least, was filmed here near Mount Hood at the Timberline Lodge. Eventually I'll go there. I think me and my dad will go to the Timberline Lodge and just kind of look around at some point. But the Timberline Lodge is where they filmed the exterior of The Shining. But The Shining Hotel itself, that story, The Shining, was inspired by the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. Kobe says, what is the most luxurious, biggest, and most expensive room on the Queen Mary? There's two, because you have to remember that the ship is symmetrical. on both sides. So if you have one fancy room on a port side, there's going to be an equally sized room on the starboard. So I want to say the Churchill suite and the Queen Mary suite, I think that's the opposite one. Those are the biggest suites on the Queen Mary. And they're both equally luxurious. That being said, before the ship closed for the pandemic, the company that was operating the ship just wasn't doing so well, so the room wasn't really luxurious by any means. It was big and it was expensive, but it wasn't luxurious. But yeah. I'm guessing that's what you mean, right? You meant the staterooms? Unless you meant one of the public rooms, then that's a different story. But, anger. Aurora says, would you ever buy a Lego Titanic? No. When I was a kid, I was into Legos, but as I got older, I prefer, like, realistic-looking models. I like realism a lot, so Lego models don't interest me. Brian says, I was standing at the edge of the bow of the Queen Mary, looking over when the foghorn combined fear of heights and deafening sounds scared me to death. I turned white as a ghost. Yeah. It's actually pretty cool to stand on the ship right as the Queen Mary's whistles go off, because it scares the heck out of people. You know, they don't expect it. So I love having a model railroad. I grew up having model railroads and stuff, and I never get tired of looking at them just going around in circles. This is what's called a loop layout, which means that the train can go forever in circles and circles. But some people like having what's called a point-to-point layout, which means that there's no loop. It goes from one end to the other, and that usually requires you stopping the train, rearranging the cars and the locomotive and stuff, and then sending it back the other way. I don't like point-to-point operations that much. They're more realistic for sure, because in real life, trains don't make loops. But I like looping layouts. You know, I just like sitting here and just watching the train go by. Boy, that whole train needs dusting. The whole layout needs dusting. But I'll do that before I paint it. I'll dust the whole thing, vacuum it all up, and clean everything, so that way when I need to paint it or add the plaster cloth and all that, it'll be nice and clean. I'll tell you, because the thing about train layouts is what takes the longest is, first of all, building it. Second of all, putting down the track and then wiring up the track. Those are the things that take the longest, because it requires a lot of skill. And with train layouts, it does require skill. You have to know how electricity works. You have to wire everything up correctly. You have to know some basic model architecture, at least, so you know how to build bridges. You know how to create curves for the trains. Like, I didn't just, like, buy sections of track and snap them together. I bought flexible track that's designed so you can flex it and curve it any radius you want. And then from there, I had to solder them together. So you gotta know how to use a soldering iron and all that, which soldering irons are pretty easy. But, you know, so it takes a lot of different skills, and I've built up those skills in my life. So being able to use them is actually really cool for a model railroad layout. Once this thing is mostly built out, I'll never say it's done. It's never completed, because anybody who owns model railroads knows that you're never quite done. You're always changing stuff. But when it is mostly done, I may keep this forever. Unless there comes a day when I move into a really big house it will be my forever house maybe or something, and I decide to have a whole room dedicated just to trains, then I might build a bigger layout and attach this one to it. But until that happens, this will probably be the layout I keep for the rest of my life. I said the same thing about my N-scale layout too, but the thing about N-scale, as much as I love N-scale because it's so tiny and you can put a lot of stuff in a small amount of space, N-scale just, it's too... When it comes to Steam operations, it's too fragile. In the end, my layout no longer worked. Like, none of my engines were working. They just don't last the way diesel engines last on an N-scale layout. So I switched to ON30 because it's far larger. It's twice HO scale. So it's a huge scale. These engines, to carry the locomotive, I have to hold it with two hands, So because it's so big and it's so well built, it lasts forever. So that's what I like about it. Yeah. All right, let's see. What are people saying? Dangerous Brian says, have you heard of rapper Coolio? No. Daniel says, hey, Alex, would you love to have a model kit of the Queen Mary? Yes, are you offering one to me? I'd love to have a model kit of the Queen Mary. Although I will admit, I'm looking for a 3/50th scale, but those don't really exist anymore. Daniel says, hey, Alex, did you know that the Walt Disney World steam locomotives were originally National Mexican Railway Steam Locomotives, or NDM? Yes. A lot of people don't know this anymore, but my channel, Alex the Historian, I was a Disney historian. That's the whole reason why I started this channel, is because it was all about Disney. So yeah, I definitely know about the Walt Disney World locomotives. Cunard Weissline says, I am drinking my English breakfast tea from my Royal Albert Old Country Roses Bone China teacup. Awesome. I finished all my tea. I'm going to end this live stream soon, so I'm going to try to catch up to comments, and then we're going to get going. Tyler says, I know you're not big on Titanic, but I love the Grand Staircase. By the way, Atlantic is a 1929 movie. Oh, pretty cool. Yeah, I do love the Grand Staircase on Titanic. It is beautiful. Gump says, really enjoyed your older train builds. Would love to see you build your current layout. Yep, it's going to happen. So you'll see me document that. Like I said earlier, I'm going to make specific videos for this channel, but I'm thinking about live streaming during, like, when I'm working on them. I'm thinking about live streaming that on my second channel, the Alex Adner channel. So that way people can kind of see me working on stuff and talk with me while I work on stuff. But yeah, so... But on this channel, you'll see the updates of me building the layout. So this is the last time you will see it look like this, you guys. It'll start changing pretty soon. And all the cars, I'm going to take them off the track, clean every single one, clean all their wheels, and take different parts off the locomotives and stuff and clean them and get everything nice and back in working order. I think what's really cool about the ON30 scale trains is they do benefit from an annual cleaning, which is kind of cool because it's a lot like having a real railroad, but in miniature. Daniel says, hey Alex, you had N-scale 460. I know you said it stopped working, but what were your thoughts on it before it stopped working? An N-scale 460, yeah, I did have one. The 460 did not stop working. It continued working, but... Well, wait. Did that one stop working? No, it kept working, but the 460 had a problem where, you see, in N scale, one of the reasons why I hated working with Steam on N scale is that Sylvia says keep the green light. I don't know if I'll keep the green light because I only keep it green because all the foam is white, but once the layout is painted, you won't be able to see the details if the only light that's on it is green. So you'll need to have white light on it. But going back to Daniel's question, so when you work with steam locomotives in N scale, which is really tiny, like the locomotives are no taller than an inch. They're very tiny. And because they don't have much weight to them, they have difficulty pulling cars without the use of traction tires. So they keep rubber tires on the wheels, and those rubber tires provide the tractive effort. And so the problem with those rubber tires is that they wear out. And when they wear out, unless you're an expert at taking apart the locomotive, you pretty much cannot replace them. I'm telling you that right now. I've tried. And I'm not an expert at taking apart locomotives that small. So I couldn't replace the traction tires. And it became a useless locomotive because it couldn't even pull the trains. So Steve says, can't wait to get your N scale up and running. Oh, my N scale. Yeah. So Expedition Steve is in the chat. He's my friend Steve. Like I said, there's two Steves on my channel. There's the Steve that does my live streams with me. That's Steve A. But this is Steve R. Expedition Steve. He's the one I gave my N scale layout to. So Steve built this layout for me, like the wood table and everything from scratch. I gave him some basic designs, like this is what I want, and then he went and built it. And then from there, I added all the foam and the track and built up the layout and everything. But he did this in exchange for me giving him my N-scale layout and some of my N-scale trains, so that way he has something to kind of, fiddle around with. So that's where it went. So in case people are wondering what happened to the old N-scale layout, it went to my friend Steve. But, so I'm excited to continue working on this layout. And, so everybody, this is your last look at this layout as it appears today. It'll start changing within the next couple days. Lina McQueen says, how fast can your train go? Not very fast. I don't know how, there's no way to measure it. Like, there's no, speedometer, so I can't measure it. But it doesn't go very fast. They're not made to go fast. They're model trains. So, and these are steam locomotives. Some people have model Shinkansens. Shinkansens are the Japanese bullet trains. So the model Shinkansens, they can go pretty fast. But these trains, they're not built to go fast. And so therefore they don't go fast. So they're built to go relatively slow speeds. And plus, these are so expensive, I don't want to run them fast, because you're just asking for trouble. So, they are not meant to be racehorses. Justin says, as far as you know, is the Cunard line or Carnival that all that interested in helping to support the Queen Mary beyond where they've been so far? I know they are still recovering from COVID, but curious. No, Cunard line has never been interested in preserving the Queen Mary, and they still aren't. They really don't. I hate to put it this way, you guys, but Cunard line really doesn't care about the Queen Mary. They might be a little bit outspoken if they saw the Queen Mary just destroyed. Like, let's say they added like a water slide to the top of the Queen Mary. Cunard might say something to a public, like a magazine or something and be like, hey, that's not right. But Cunard really doesn't care what happens to the Queen Mary. They don't care who's preserving it or who isn't preserving it. Cunard is all about what's happening right now. They only care about modern ships because that's what their business is. To them, the Queen Mary is just, a big hunk of metal that's still floating in a harbor somewhere. So Cunard really doesn't care about the Queen Mary. So, Dan O'Meara says, weird, I have one for 5 years, and there was little wear on the traction tires. Yes, but mine was 10 years old. So, yeah, mine was 10 years old, so there was a lot of wear on the traction tires. Daniel says, did you ever think of doing an HO layout before ON30? Yes, I did think of it. But HO does not have the locomotives I want. So ON30 has the locomotives I want. So, and that's the thing about having smaller scales, is that there's more and more of a limit as to what engines you can get. I prefer narrow gauge. That's my favorite type of train, is narrow gauge. And I prefer Forneys, which is the one that's passing in front of the camera right now. That's a Forney locomotive. They don't have Forneys in HO scale. So that was one of the main reasons why I never got it. But even then, HO scale, they still put traction tires on their locomotives, because even though HO scale is big, it's still not big enough to accurately run long trains. So they rely on traction tires for friction. ON30, they don't. ON30, the locomotives are so big and heavy, they don't need rubber traction tires. They just produce enough traction of their own. So that's why I went with ON30. Plus, ON30 is so large and fully metal that you can repair it. And it's big enough that you can actually like do repairs to it very easy. HO scale is so small that repairs are much harder to do. So, Aurora says, "Do you ever like Thomas the Train?" I don't hate Thomas the Train, but I don't like Thomas the Train either. So I'm just neutral on that. I don't have any opinions about Thomas the Train. Cunard White Starlin says, if the plane hadn't caught on, how long do you think the Mary would have stayed in service for? I think Queen Mary would have stayed in service until the early to mid 1970s, because I think by the 1970s, people would have thought the ship looked too old to sail on. That being said, you know, Queen Elizabeth could have stayed around. Let's say if, you know, they have an average, you know, they have the ability to be in service for 40 years. So, you know, if Queen Elizabeth was put in service in 1940, then 40 years later she would have been in service until 1980. So, but that again is, there's a whole bunch of factors to it. So even though she could have been in service till 1980, she would have been so outdated by then. I mean, Queen Elizabeth probably would have been retired in the mid-70s as well, just because, you know, by the thing about the 70s was people in the 70s hated anything that was historic. They just didn't care about history back then. So they just destroyed everything. But yeah, I truly believe that even though Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were designed to last until the year 1980, they wouldn't have lasted that long. So, so Tyler, to kind of specify, they cared when the Queen Mary was in service because the Queen Mary was in service. It was still their ship. They cared back then because it was their job to care. But it's kind of like, see, I don't know a good analogy. It's kind of like, no, I don't know a good analogy for it. All I can say is that Cunard is a company that is really only concerned with what's happening right now to their modern ships. That's all they care about. That's all they've ever cared about. Cunard is not a museum. They don't do museums. They do modern cruising. That's their job. That's their goal for their company. So they have no interest in helping to preserve the Queen Mary because that's not what their company does. And frankly, it would be hard to convince their shareholders to care as well, because shareholders, they want to make sure the company is doing what the company was designed to do. The company is designed to operate modern cruising ships. So the shareholders would not be happy if Cunard was donating money or even effort to preserve an old ship that has been retired. So that's what I mean by it. So, yeah, I've heard of the mallard. Oh, it's raining finally. Oh, I love when it rains here. It's so nice. Because I'm surrounded by nature, so when I grew up in Orange County, everything is concreted. So when it rains, you hear the sound of rain hitting concrete or metal, and it just doesn't sound nice. But here, there's like nothing but trees and bushes and plants and rivers and ponds and creeks. So when the rain comes down here, it has a whole different symphony of sound to it. It's so beautiful. And plus, it also cleans the air too. So the air is already clean to begin with, but it gets rid of that tinge of smog in the air. So I love when it rains here. Maybe I'm weird, but I love when it rains. Kobe says, is ON30 scale supposed to portray narrow gauge? Yes, that's exactly why it's called ON30. So ON30 response, it means O scale. So if anybody knows trains, they know HO scale. It's the most popular scale you can buy a train in. HO stands for half O. And so this is O scale. The N stands for narrow gauge. And then there's 30 after it, which stands for 30 inches, which is the scale width of the two rails. So the space in between the two rails, if it were scaled up to real life, represents 30 inches. So that's why it's called ON30. O scale narrow gauge 30. But the funny thing about ON30, though, is that technically the gauge of the tracks being 30 inches apart is not a real thing. There's no place in the United States where the rails are 30 inches apart. It's either 24 or 36. There's no in between. But the reason why they chose 30 for the scale is because you can use HO scale tracks as your narrow gauge tracks. And that's what these are. These tracks are HO scale, but the train running on it is twice the scale. So, funny little fun fact about that. So, yeah. So I know my friend was like, oh, Alex has a HO scale layout. I'm like, no. I don't have an HO scale layout. I have an ON30 scale layout, which uses HO scale track, but everything else is twice the size. So, yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Dino. Oh, that's so nice of you. Oh my gosh. Dino says, your chats are always good and interesting. Oh, thank you so much. Daniel says, have you ever been to a narrow gauge railroad besides the Disneyland Railroad? No, I don't think I have, actually. I would love to. I'm sure one of the first narrow gauge railroads I ever visit will probably be the Durango and Silverton in Colorado. That'll probably be the first one I ever visit. But I also have a goal someday in the future to visit the Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington Railroad. which looks, their trains and cars look exactly like the one that's running on this track right now. Ryan says, my favorite photo of Queen Mary is the one that will flash on screen when she is crossing a bridge at sunset or sunrise. Such a beautiful view. Yeah, that's the Queen Mary passing underneath the Verrazano Narrows Bridge in New York. John says, the QE2 launched in 1969. Its concept, design, and construction started years before. This likely spelled doom for the Queen Mary long before 1967. Well, keep in mind, the reason why they started building the QE2 was because they had to compete, with jet travel. They wanted something that looked newer. The Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth looked really old. But in the scenario that airplanes did not surpass ocean liners, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth probably could have kept going without Cunard's need to build a new ship so soon. Because remember, Cunard didn't have the money to build the QE2. They didn't want to build a ship. They needed to build a ship. They needed to build a ship because Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth were getting old, and jet travel was making them too expensive to operate because there wasn't enough passengers. So they needed one ship to replace two expensive ones. But if jet travel had never done that, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth would be still fully booked, and there would be no need to build the Queen Elizabeth or the QE2 so soon. They could have waited till the mid-70s to launch the QE2. So that's why I think that. Mark says, Knott's has a narrow gauge. Yes, they do. Steve A says, do you have a favorite model train museum? Model train museum? No, I don't have one. Daniel says, I thought the photo was the Golden Gate Bridge. No, it's not, because, well, first of all, it doesn't look like a Golden Gate Bridge. But the second reason is because Queen Mary never went to San Francisco. The Queen Mary never sailed that far north of the Pacific. So the only time she sailed anywhere close to that north of the Pacific was when she came to Long Beach. But yeah, she's never sailed into San Francisco. I'm not even sure. Well, no, she could have. She could have. I was going to say I'm not sure she could fit underneath the Golden Gate, but if the Queen Mary 2 could do it, the original Queen Mary could do it. So that's not a problem. But yeah, the original Queen Mary never came to San Francisco. Yeah, that photo is of the Queen Mary passing underneath the Verrazano Narrows Bridge in New York. Justin says, I kind of like your layout of the train. It looks like it's traveling in Antarctica. I know, that's embarrassing because it's not meant to look like ice. It's just the color of the foam that the layout is built on. You have to build on foam because if you want to stick things like trees into the ground, well, you can't do that with a hard material like wood. Like, you'd have to drill into the wood and glue all that, and it's just too much. But you use foam because you can easily carve into the foam. So if I decided, you know what, it would look really great if there was like a creek right here crossing underneath the tracks. All I have to do is take my foam melter and I can melt a creek into the foam. So that's why you want to build on top of foam, because you can do awesome things with it. So that's why there's white foam everywhere. But again, that'll all be painted very soon. I've got to put the plaster cloth down to make the shapes of the mountains, because believe it or not, nothing's been fully carved into the shape of the mountains yet. It's just what you call like a conceptual carving, which means that it's just the basic shape of the mountain, but not the full shape. So there'll be new stuff. There'll be like hills and things behind me that you can't see right now because I've never built them. So stuff like that be pretty cool. Ken says, best part about ON30, in my opinion, is the limited amount of availability. Keeps me from going crazy on purchases. That's the one thing I don't like, because there's so much limited availability of stuff. The company that usually makes this stuff, Bachmann, they don't make as much of this anymore. ON30 had a weird popularity time frame, and right now it's not that popular anymore. So they don't make as much stuff anymore. In fact, I'm not even sure they make anything at all anymore. So everything that we buy on eBay and stuff is like previously owned. Nicholas Grossman says, is SS France one of your favorite ocean liners? SS France from 1910 is on my top 10 list, but not the SS France from 1960. So the SS France from 1910 is on my top 10 list. Yeah, Cumbres and Toltec is a nice railroad, too. Kobe says, does your model trains have a smoke generator in the funnel? Oh, no, it doesn't. I wouldn't want those anyway. It would hurt my lungs. I went to a model railroad museum once, and they had all kinds of smoking steam locomotives. I had to walk out of that place every 10 minutes to get fresh air because the whole room was filled with smoke, and it was making me cough. There's supposedly a tugboat in Liverpool somewhere, or not in Liverpool, but near Liverpool, and it's called the Dan. I know, weird, huh? The Dan, so D-A-N, as in Daniel, and inside, it's all Art Deco looking, just like the Queen Mary. All wood-paneled Art Deco. Because, supposedly, the guy who owned the tugboat in the 1920s and 30s, he went aboard the RMS Queen Mary, and he saw how beautiful it was. And immediately, he went to get advice from the carpenters and people who built the Queen Mary's interiors. And he said, I want the interiors of my tugboat to look like that. So they gave him advice. They sent him to some carpenters who could do the work for a relatively cheap price. And he had that done. And he had the whole interiors of the tugboat designed in Art Deco style. And it's beautiful. I wish I could go there. If I was going to Liverpool, there's a small chance I might, but if I was going to Liverpool, I definitely want to visit that. Sylvia says, do you have any favorite ships that sailed the Great Lakes? Yes, the SS Keewatin. Captain Happy says, Royal Yacht Britannia is interesting. You get to go by, walk through a shopping mall, relatively plain decor. It was working yacht, and it still is well kept. I would recommend seeing it. Yeah, I was just talking about that earlier in the live stream, is that the Royal Yacht Britannia is all the way in Edinburgh, and I'm not going to be anywhere near Edinburgh. So I want to go there to see the Britannia. But, and I was talking to my friend Chris, I was showing him a tour of it, and he was like, it's cool, but like, he's not interested, so, and this is going to be his trip too, so I can't make him go somewhere that he doesn't want to go. But yeah, I wish I could see Edinburgh, but we won't be anywhere near it. We're going to be going to places like Bristol, London, Southampton, and then we're going to go all the way to Belfast. But we won't be anywhere near Edinburgh. You know, I wanted to go to Newcastle upon Tyne so I could see the Turbinia at its museum, but we won't be anywhere near there either. We'll just be so busy. Bristol is going to be a really busy city for us to visit. There's lots of things for us to see and film there and experience. And in London, a lot of things to see, film, and experience. And then a good chunk of the trip is going to be Paris. So we won't even be in the UK for like a good, like there's, I think a whole week we're going to be in Paris. Because there's a lot to see and do that we have to do for that trip. So, but yeah. I'm kind of hoping that when we do go, because we're going to take the Queen Mary to get there, right? We take the Queen Mary to get there, drops us off at Southampton. Then the Queen Mary's going to have to go back to New York while we stay behind. So it'll take 8 days to get to New York. When it gets to New York, it'll turn around 8 days later. That's 14 days, right? No, 16. That's 16 days, technically. But one of the trips, it was 14 days. So we knew we had 2 weeks to be in Europe. And I'm hoping, though, that maybe when we do go, it'll be one of the days that it's only 16, like it's 16 days. So it's an extra 2 days. I'm hoping, because that's an extra 2 days we can be in, like, London or something to do more filming. So, because, like I said, almost a whole week of our time is going to be spent in Paris. So I want more time in the UK, because that's kind of what I want more out of the trip. So, but Chris also doesn't want to go to certain places. Like, he doesn't want to go to Liverpool or Edinburgh or Newcastle upon Tyne or Portsmouth. So those are places I can't go. You know, I have to remember that he's also going on this trip with me, because he's got to film stuff for his channel. So yeah, I can't dictate everything we do, you know. It's got to also be a joint thing on his part. But yeah. But there will be lots of places we'll visit, though. Yeah. Daniel says, what makes you love the Kiwatin? It's a beautiful ship. I look at the inside and the stuff, it's beautiful. Really, that's all I have to say about it. It's a beautiful ship, so. Yeah, Kobe, Bachmann doesn't make as much ON30 stuff anymore. Like, they used to make, like, tons of stuff, but they just stopped production. So almost anything you have that is ON30 is, like, the last of it. That's scary, you know? Like, even these 3 boxcars here, I got that from a man who, like, these were broken when I got them. They were broken when I got them, and he said, look, he's like, they're technically trash. He goes, but I figured I might as well see if somebody would buy them for $10 each. Now, if I bought a brand new one, it would cost around anywhere between $40 to $50 brand new. So I thought, $10? That's not bad. So I bought the cars, each one for $10, and I fixed them myself. So if I hadn't done that, they would have otherwise gone in the garbage, and that would have been 3 less boxcars that exist out there for people to purchase. So I like buying old train stuff that I can fix and repair, not just because it's cheaper, but also because there's kind of a satisfaction that it's still running, it's still operating, you know. Roar says, Alex, would you go to Windsor? I want to go to Windsor. I asked Chris if he would go to Windsor Castle with me, or even just to Windsor, you know, because there's a beautiful town there, and there's a couple of historic buildings in Windsor that I really want to see and film the outside of so I can make videos, but he doesn't really want to go to Windsor. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, if we have that extra 2 days, because if we went this year, we would only have 14 days between when the ship leaves and when it comes back for us. So that's 14 days. But if it happened to be at a time frame where it's 16 days in between and we have that extra 2 days, I might be able to convince him to go somewhere else, like Windsor or possibly Liverpool. I might be able to convince him to do that. But that's if we have that extra 2 days on hand. But the other thing, too, is if we have that extra 2 days on hand, you know, what if we went somewhere else, like while we were in Paris? Why wouldn't we go somewhere like, oh, here's another place in France that I really wanted to go. And he wants to go too, but we don't have time. I want to go to Mont Saint-Michel, which is, I hope I pronounced that right, which is a city, a medieval city built on a massive rock out in the middle of a beach. It's beautiful, Mont Saint-Michel. And it's located, it's a 3-hour train ride outside of Paris. The only reason why he and I aren't going there is because the only way to really enjoy it is either, one, you rent a car and drive there yourself so you can do things on your own time, or if you have to take a train, you might as well spend the night there because you won't have enough time to do everything in one day. So if we have that extra 2 days, we might actually go to Mont St. Mitchell, and I might film that city and make a couple videos out of that. But that's if we have the extra 2 days. So, yes, I hope everybody who's experiencing Hurricane Ian right now ends up being okay. You know, you are all in my thoughts and prayers. Sylvia says, what do you think of the Great Eastern? I find these hybrid ships fascinating. Great Eastern's pretty interesting. I'm not fascinated with it, but it is pretty cool. Sylvia says, have you been to visit the SS Keewatin? No. It was converted to a museum ship, very well kept museum ship. It is currently owned by a company that has kept the Keewatin closed all this time since COVID. It's not closed because of COVID anymore. It's just closed because it's closed. And there's a lot of people who are angry about that. They're angry that the company hasn't reopened the ship yet. Even the volunteers who take care of the ship are angry that the company hasn't reopened it. My friend Chris tried to reach out to the company because my friend Chris was going to go up to Canada, and he said, Alex, I'll film Keewatin for you for your videos. He says, if I can get there. He tried calling them up. No one would answer him. So even as a YouTuber with some pull, he couldn't do it. It's just sad. So no, nobody's been to Keewatin since 2019. Right2Peep says, you can always return to the UK to see those other things in the future. I like how you say that, because this is like a once-in-a-lifetime trip for me. I do not have the money to go back to the UK. So, you know, that's why I'm putting that's why I have a fundraiser up to help me raise money, because there's no way I could raise all $8,000 on my own. It's not possible. Because it would take me like 3 to 4 years to save up that money. And in that time, who knows if something happens and I might need to use some of that money. So, yeah, this is, you know, there is a 95% chance I'll never go back to Europe. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing for me. Daniel says, what makes me sad is that most narrow-gauge tourist railroads are becoming popular. So why don't they get the respect they deserve and make narrow-gauge model trains? Well, I mean, it's not so much because it's narrow-gauge. It's because model trains, in particular, are not as popular in the United States as they used to be. It's still growing in places like the UK. Like you go to the UK and there's like tons of youngsters who love model trains still. But in the United States, less and less young people are interested in model trains. It's becoming like almost like a dying thing here in the United States. So I remember one time I had this chef, and she asked me, what are your hobbies? What do you do? I said, oh, I build model trains. And she laughed at me and she said, isn't that what old men do? And I'm like, yeah. So yeah, the reason isn't because there's no interest in narrow gauge. It's because there's no interest in model trains in the United States anyway. Kids here are playing video games. They don't care about model trains. So, Michael, I cannot be specific because it is never a good idea to give specific reasons for things that happen between you and an employer. So all I can tell you is I did not like being there. I did not like being there. I did not enjoy my employment at QMI. That is why I left. That is also why the former executive director, Steve Oblonsky, my friend Steve, he left as well for the same Same basic reasons as I did. So, like I said, I cannot go into specifics. But yeah. And he and I no longer endorse the organization. So, but yeah. We wish them the best, but yeah. What's supposed to be so NCC says, my trip to the UK also may be once-in-a-lifetime trip with my Parkinson's disease diagnosis. I don't know how long I'll be physically able, so I'm doing everything now. That's a good idea. I've always lived my life with the idea that... See, because I grew up really poor, right? Like, I did not... Like, some people think that I grew up in a wealthy family or something. I don't know why they assume that, but I grew up very poor. You know, I know what it's like to not have money for anything. You know, like yesterday, my one of my friends was like, oh, what was your first video game console? I said, oh, mine was an Xbox when I was a teenager. And he says, oh, a teenager? He goes, you didn't have video games when you were a kid? It's like a Nintendo 64 or something. I was like, no. I was like, we didn't have money for video games when I was a kid. I made toys out of cardboard. That's what I did. So, but yeah. So I grew up with an appreciation for things. But the other thing, too, is I also watched as people I knew, friends, family, or whatever, they would wait to do fun things until they were more than able to afford it, which is smart to a certain extent, but then they would be old and less able to do those things by the time that opportunity came around. So I didn't want to live my life going, oh, well, I'm going to wait to do everything fun when I'm older. Because there are some people in my family who perished young, and they didn't get to do too much fun stuff. So I knew, I was like, I'm going to live my life as if there may not be a tomorrow. In the sense that if I have the ability to experience something, that instead of waiting for it, I'm just going to go and do it. Because you never know when that opportunity will come again. And that's how I've lived my life, and I've done pretty good at it so far. So, you know, I suppose a smart person would say, well, I'll go to the UK when I'm 45 and I have a really good career. Okay, that is smart. But what if you don't make it to 45? So that's why I'm like, if I have the ability to do something, I'm going to try to do it. You know, that's how I live my life. But, yeah, so I agree, NCC. Like, if you have the ability to go somewhere and to do it now, do it now. That is, you know. And there was a man, 74, I want to say, on my channel. He told me himself, he said, the best thing you can do is to travel when you're young. That's what he told me, a 74-year-old man. And he said, because you have the ability to do all kinds of things. He says, like, I waited till I was too old. And he said, I waited till I had the money and I was too old. And he's like, now I can't do anything. And so, yeah, I was like, that confirmed it for me. I was like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, I think. Yeah, it's been almost 3 hours. I was going to end this an hour ago, but I was answering people's questions. Rytopia says, you're not very optimistic about your future. No, I am optimistic about my future. It's just that it's always, I think... Again, I don't know how to rephrase it for you, but there's a possibility that something will happen. You just never know if you're going to make it to the age that you think you're going to make it to. So I think it's a smart idea to experience something when you're young. Just like the old man told me. I hate to say old man, but I can't name him by name. But the elderly folk, who was 74, told me, he says, travel when you're young. He says, because you still have the ability to do everything you want to do, and you never know what's going to happen the next day. He says, so take the opportunity when you can. And so, like I said, yeah, it's not that I'm not, you know, it's not that I think I'm going to die at a young age. It's just that you don't know what's going to happen. You might as well take the opportunity when you have the ability to take the opportunity. So that's how I see things. It's not that I think I'm going to die young. I hope I don't die young. But you know, you should take an opportunity when you have it, you know. 1 minute till the 3-hour mark, says Lightning McQueen. Let's see, we'll hit the 3-hour mark. Well, technically, actually, I started at 4:05 p.m., so I'm like 6 minutes from the 1-hour mark. 5 minutes from the 1 hour. No, yeah, 6 minutes from the 1-hour mark. But I am going to end it now. It is 7 p.m. It is time for me to get going and do stuff. I have other things to do. But anyway, folks, thank you so much for watching. The next tea time will be on Sunday. Keep an eye out this Friday for a documentary about the Spruce Goose flying boat. And I think Saturday will be Chapter 2 of the Queen Mary, Queen of the Queens novel as an audiobook. So keep an eye out for that. So, alright, folks. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.